Have you ever sat down to play with a new group and brought out a deck that was a bad match for the table? Maybe it was too strong, maybe it was too weak. Regardless, either you or the other players end up having less of a good time than you were hoping for. For me, it's important that everyone at the table enjoys the game. So today, we're going to talk about the best decks that you can play into a new playgroup to ensure that everyone has a good time. The idea is to have decks that you can bring to your LGS and play with a group of players, regardless of their deck's power level, and still have a good time yourself. Some themes are inherently stronger than others, so we'll have some suggestions for themes you can build your deck around in just a moment. When I'm building new decks for groups, I want to play into one of Commander's strengths: high variance. Or the fact that most Commander games play out very differently from each other, oftentimes in very fun and interesting ways. You can build towards this by leaving some more format staples like Cyclonic Rift in your more pushed high power decks. Other cards like tutors, or cards that let you search your library for another card, should also be left out. So that way, you have less games that go the same way. I'll even go as far as to run less removal in these kinds of decks, with a sort of race to the finish mentality winning out over the desire to have interaction for things that may put other players out ahead of me. With all of that in mind, let's talk about some deck themes that we can build around to make a fun and interesting game of Commander with our new playgroup. Let's talk about a theme that sounds scarier than it is: theft. Theft decks want to take cards from your opponent's decks and play them as your own. So, your deck is only as powerful as the cards your opponents run. While some players don't enjoy this mechanic, it is generally recognized as a good way to let the table's power level sort itself out. You can further play into this by making sure your deck is stealing things symmetrically, by using your theft cards to target players in some sort of order so one player doesn't end up feeling like you just used their deck exclusively while leaving other players alone. Good commanders for theft include Don Andreas the Renegade, Gonti Canny Acquisitioner, and Admiral Beckett Brass. Next up is clones. Clone decks are similar to theft decks in that the power level of your opponent's decks will determine how powerful your deck is, while giving your opponents a little more agency over what you even have access to, since if they don't play it, you can't clone it. You can really play into this by including some cards that have high synergy with other cards that are common enough in the format, but that you don't run yourself. Cards like Deadeye Navigator have been seen a million times in combos and as value pieces, but it's a lot more fun if you have to find something to pair it with from your opponent's boards. Some suggested commanders are the Master Multiplied, Riku of Two Reflections, and Volrath the Shapestealer. Another fun archetype for a new group is a tried and true stompy. Big ramp into big creatures and looking to win with good old-fashioned combat damage. As people like to say, this is magic as Richard Garfield intended. To make things a little more fair and less explosive, I'll omit certain cards like Craterhoof Behemoth or Triumph of the Horde, so that my wins are plainly telegraphed and opponents have ample time to deal with my threats. Some fun, big, stompy commanders are Goreclaw, Terror of Qual Sisma, Gishoth, Sun's Avatar, and my personal favorite, Radagast the Brown. The last archetype I want to discuss are engine decks, or decks that want to set up a bunch of cards that synergize with each other, usually with the goal of just drawing more cards or making some silly interaction come together. It's harder to come up with examples for this because it really comes down to what you like to do. But the overall idea is to build a deck that has a personal goal that is not necessarily winning the game, and play the deck to achieve said goal without worrying too much about what other people are doing. Cyrus plays a rune deck that has a personal goal of using Astral Dragon to make more and more copies of Conjurer's Closet, simply because he thinks it's funny. The deck can win with the horde of 3/3s that it makes doing this, but that hardly seems overpowered as it takes so many cards to set up. So, flip through some cards or think back to a silly interaction you love, and build a deck that wants to do that thing more than it wants to win the game. People love these kinds of decks, and they're the kind of decks that are going to create lasting memories for the group. It's hard to suggest specific commanders for, but look for things like Karn, Silver Golem, or Bellow, Bard of Brambles. Changing cards into different card types usually makes for some shenanigans. That's our list of fun decks you can bring to the table with a new group to optimize for fun. Let us know in the comments below if you'd like me to deep dive any of these themes. I'd personally love to talk more about these personal goal style decks. Please consider hitting the thumbs up and subscribing to show us you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.